okay, originally our plan was to talk about focus, right?
Yeah.
But like, fuck focus. I think that we should talk about whatever because like the whole journey of us doing this podcast, like I feel like that's how we should wrap it up in talking about like where this has taken us because I feel like from inception, this has turned into something completely different than we expected. And we've just like let it do that. And I think
Yeah.
that would, right? Like, let's just talk about
Mm.
what that journey's looked like and like what we've learned about ourselves, about each other, about because I don't even know if I believe in ADHD anymore. Like, let's just go on a journey today.
I love that.
I like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's funny
Yeah.
because when you first said you didn't believe in ADHD, I was like, "Ah, but it's so inhibited my
Like
life for so
I do and
long."
I don't.
Mm.
And then,
I
but
know.
then I stop and I think I never felt flawed until
Mm,
there were major expectations thrown upon me
mm,
and from myself and from the world as an adult. And then once I got diagnosed, my mindset shifted because the way I was learning about it and the way
mm,
people were telling me what
Mm.
ADHD means and how it would affect my life. So then for me, it was like, I've been battling with like, oh, ADHD is terrible. And then I loved ADHD. And then I'm also like, well, what does it mean? And it just like it put me in what I was focusing on was growing and all the lack mindset
Yeah.
of like, what
mm,
can't I do rather
mhm,
than the opposite of what can I do and how can I find my strengths. So for me, that's where it led me
mhm.
to right now. As you say that, I'm like, oh, because I haven't focused on the positives of it as much as I have focused on all the validation of like, oh, see, these are your
That's
weaknesses
so
and you never
good.
got support for them. And
Mm.
then you're just focusing still on what you can't do.
Yes. Yeah, right. You're energizing that. I
Yeah.
think like yeah, even just it as a label. I think it's that I'm because I feel like it's a combination of so many things and I feel like okay, there are probably like groups of us that have certain neurological differences, certain
Mhm.
characteristics, even just personality traits that are common. Like it's so hard to parse out what's what that it's sort of like,
Yeah.
where does it serve us to kind of as a point of self-understanding and where is it actually like
Yes.
Yeah.
limiting?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want to share on that. What's coming to me is like throughout my journey of like self-discovery with healing and awakening and all those things, I um self-diagnosed, tried to get diagnosed, and they were like, you need to show a documented history and you got good grades and etc. So like, no,
It's just
sorry, not
subdued.
today.
Yeah.
Yeah, not today. You don't qualify. And I'm like, okay, well, I still know that I have it, but that's fine.
Yeah.
And and it wasn't that I was like trying to seek medication. It was more trying to seek validation, I think.
Mhm.
And then from there it was like, okay, well, it doesn't matter whether I have the technical label or not.
Mhm.
Through like my spiritual awakening journey, really understanding like highly sensitive people, whether,
Mhm.
that's the spectrum, that's ADHD, as these blanket giant umbrella terms. Like everybody is an individual, everybody's expression
Mhm.
is unique, but these umbrella terms like help be like, okay, yeah, you all share a lot of these characteristics and there's like expressions that are similar, but of course everybody's unique. And like through my hospital journey, like seeing, kids with, what looks like ADHD or what looks like autism as like highly sensitive children,
Mhm.
but then seeing them beyond that, like again, this kid who came into my office and had completely irregular play and was like bouncing off the walls. And then I gave him a box of crayons and a piece of paper, and he dumped out the crayons and started making like a 16
Mm.
point star, instead of
Mhm.
drawing with them. It was just like, okay, you're here clearly as like an alien in a human body, like in the
Mhm.
most beautiful way
Mhm. Mhm.
Mhm.
to like help this planet, and it's so obvious. And of course, like yes, it's going to be difficult for this child to learn how to like behave or talk or like
Mhm.
assimilate to societal norms, but that's the fucking point. Like that's the fucking point. These kids are
Mhm.
here to
Mhm.
break it all, to break the systems, to shake shit up, like coming in as high vibrational beings in like already having stages of enlightenment. And I've heard it
Mhm.
said that like sometimes children will come in with disabilities so that they don't have the societal expectations placed on them, so they don't get programmed in the heavy way that most of us did.
Mhm.
And I think
I've read that
that's
too.
beautiful,
I love that. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it's like that's segues so well into like to what degree is our want to categorize ourselves just coming from our misunderstanding of what it means to be human, right? And the fact that like it's almost like this isn't I kind of see ADHD not as like a set of symptoms, but a symptom of the fact that we are structured in a way that doesn't work for us and that
Mhm.
is no longer like serves our society at large. Because like what I sent you guys that voice note a while ago, the one about like, I don't know that we were done a disservice actually. Like when we started talking together, remember we were talking about how much it would have helped if we'd known in school. But
Mhm.
I think the opposite's true now. I kind of feel like we were saved because we weren't labeled. We weren't, I know we kind of struggled with the school system, but I think that's just struggle with the system in general. Like and
Mhm.
if you think of the things that we kind of have issues in common with, like the general sort of ADHD profile, it's system stuff. It's not making sense of like spiritual concepts or emotion, or it's like anytime something's too rigid, it doesn't work. And you're kind of like,
Yes.
is like, I feel like as long as our lives are sort of, and this is probably the challenge too, set up with enough support, I think that's more the issue. It's like being in a supportive partnership, being in supportive like friend groups, or like having people to kind of having some sort of tribe. I feel like that's where we struggle.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Uh,
for sure. I know for me, like I've been thinking more about the school system with ADHD and how
Yeah.
you said like we've been saved. But I feel like a lot of my belief systems about myself as like in the ability to succeed has
Mhm.
always been limited because of the system and how I couldn't
Mhm.
do it the way other kids did it. And I just
Yeah.
this belief that I was bad. And now I'm in here trying to like fight
Yeah.
for my kids to get accommodations to show what they can
Mhm.
do.
Yeah.
Um, and that system in itself, it's like we in the system of education only care about how they perform in school, but we're not taking the accounts of that this is a whole human and that it matters
Mhm.
about their whole life, not just whether they're performing in school. If they're having a hard time at home and then they're coming into school, they're not going to perform. So it doesn't matter,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
these, we're not looking at kids
What
as a
you call it.
holistic person. And
Yeah.
how do we help these kids learn themselves and have a place where they can try things and fail and feel safe to fail? They don't feel
Yeah.
safe to fail. And the moment they speak out and they get it wrong, no, that's like, nope, that's wrong. And you're like,
Mhm.
can we ask questions to get these kids to think instead of
Yeah.
you're right or wrong? Have them find their own, that's where
right.
I think a lot of teachers are not.
Yeah.
I mean, through my education for becoming an educator, I don't ever remember learning how to probe kids in an inquisitive
Mhm.
way. We
Mhm.
would talk about all of these different ways to learn, but never, I mean, I don't feel like I learned how to become a
Mhm.
teacher until I was in there
Wow.
Yeah.
and thrown to the wolves and was like, okay, how the
Yes.
heck do I get these kids to learn this? Because
Yes.
there's not just a kid who comes in for, a 45-minute class with me or the whole day, and then they're just like, that's just who they are in that moment. And that's like, there's so much drama. They're trying to share their life. They want
Yeah.
to be heard because if they're not being heard at
Yeah.
school, the ones who talk a lot, they just want to be heard. So it was like,
Yeah.
I didn't learn those things. And I
And
think,
well,
yeah,
it is hard too, because I was originally, a teacher for a short
yeah.
time too. Like bless you for your longer service. It's like a gauntlet because it's like you want to spend that time with kids. You want to give them that space, but it's like systemically, like I don't know how big your classes were. Probably about like we're like 30 kids.
Oh
Mhm.
no, no, they were bigger. I
Are
was
you
in Chicago
serious?
public schools. Yes. I had one year I had 42.
Uh,
dear
one
God,
year. I
How?
think the least amount of kids I had was 35. And then we
Oh
only had
my
two computers
God.
for the whole classroom and an overhead projector. We did not have a smart board. We did not have access to internet. Um,
oh
yeah,
my Lord. Wow. I know California
42.
set like 30
yeah,
kid caps, gosh,
yeah.
like 10 years
I don't
ago.
know
I
how
think
different it is
ours
now,
is
but when
roughly.
I was like 2010 to 2014.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that was,
Wow. I
I think
think
the
ours was
lowest
supposed
I
to be
had
capped
was
at
30.
30. Like 30 is nuts. Like 30 is nuts. Even like 20
Yeah.
is nuts. It's like there's literally not enough like power. It's the same with like I think any institution you look, hospitals are understaffed. It's like,
Yeah.
how can we
Hmm.
not figure this out? And the thing is, like, we could. And I think
Hmm.
that's part of the challenge of like these aren't like the more because the more I feel like the more I've learned, the more I'm just like, okay, these aren't we're not set like we're not there's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with us. We're just
We're,
humans. And
yeah,
like
where it's a very political system. It's not an
yeah,
education. It's not a place of discovery. It's a place of
no.
obedience. It's a place
Yeah.
of pumping out soldiers and these
Yeah.
people who follow rules and stay in a
Consumers
cycle
who get a
of
job so they can buy stuff. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not creating independent thinkers. We're not, and they say they are, but they're not.
Right.
You
And
know, when
I
my kids come home and they're like, my teacher said I have to do it this way. And I was like, but there's like 10
Like
other ways you can
still,
still get to the
yeah.
same thing, even
yeah.
though it's like a different way of learning. It's like when I look at their math, sometimes I'm like, what is this?
Mhm.
I don't even understand what's happening. This is how you can do this problem, these many ways. And it's like, they're not becoming independent thinkers. They're becoming more confused because there's
Mhm.
no like this is how you add, this is how you multiply. It's like what does it mean to multiply? What it's like very deep, and it's like okay,
Yes.
great, I want my kid to be a thinker, that I want them to understand what
Yeah.
they're doing, but at this stage in the game I got this, a sixth grade or seventh grader, I got an almost sixth grader, and I'm like all of their friends and them can barely do multiplication without the multiplication sheet in front of them, and I'm like
Mm. Right?
how have we
Forget like,
developed these muscles?
and it like
you know
where, yeah. Well, Kim, what were you gonna say? You're gonna say something.
I was gonna say, yeah, no, you're so right. And it's like the systemic problems, like this, especially, I don't know, it feels for me, we're all in this like Western culture bubble. It's what we grew up in, it's what we know the most. And like you said, it's like designed to pump out soldiers. And I've seen like alternative schools and videos and in different cultures and societies where it's like strength based, like
Mhm.
they try to do it in some of the Montessori preschools, but not so great sometimes. But
Hmm.
Yeah.
it's like, okay, can we find the individual child, see them like from the whole perspective, give them opportunities to discover their passions, their strengths, and like there are alternatives out there. They're just few and far between, but it,
Hmm.
makes me think of like, again, coming back to these highly sensitive people on this planet now. Like we are the innovators, the creatives, like designed to shake shit up, designed to break the systems. And it's either, to me, I see two paths, right? We like create something new and different, and like coming back to the concept of tribe, like you were saying, Sam, like when we can, I've heard of like conscious communities who have their own schools, and it's like completely designed in that way
Oh
where it's
wow.
like based, learning for the kids. Um, and it's like, do we kind of like
Oh,
pull
that's cool.
back and create something different and smaller and alternative, like in a tribe kind of sense? And I think that's
Hmm.
gaining popularity. A lot of people are like going towards off-grid living and like smaller
Hmm.
communities, versus some people are called to like infiltrate the system, right? Like people like
Hmm.
you, Paige, are, we're in education, are in education, and are there to infiltrate the system, getting
Yeah.
into
Mm,
like
right. Yeah.
positions to shake shit up in the existing systems. And I think
Yeah.
Yes.
there
Yeah.
are people, there are, light workers, for use of that term,
Hmm.
in those positions for that purpose. And I think we all come to this earth with a purpose and a mission that we forget. And part of the biggest part of that purpose is to learn to be ourselves, to learn how to
Mhm.
be our most authentic
Yeah.
selves. And the
Mhm.
secondary purpose is like, okay, now that we've learned who we are, how to love ourselves, like deepened that sense of self, then okay,
Mhm.
what is our secondary mission in terms of helping others? Like where do we feel the most called?
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. I love
Appreciate
that.
you.
Yeah, I love that because it's like the frequency raises just by like high frequency being here, right? So if you think about it, like if some people are called to go, okay, off grid, they're creating communities there, that's beautiful. And then but leaving the system creates just a dichotomy, right? So then it's like,
Right.
yeah, the light worker's called to work on the system itself. It's like all of these little different factions, right? Like of like soul fragments going and like working on
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
respective areas. It's like, okay. I think
Mm.
it's like the one of the hardest things I think is to do that zoom out, to remember that we're in a particular time period, like even just personally and humanity wise, where when things get tough, it's like, okay, like especially with you, Paige, I think about you all the time because it's like because with how many kids and the ages they're at, and it's like, okay, it will get easier. It's just not right now. It's like they're,
Oh
because who
yeah.
knows what they're gonna go on to do and how they're gonna shift things and what impact they'll make. And it's like you are building that now. It's just like you got to kind of remain like cognizant of that. And like I feel that often. It's
100%.
like, okay, just got to look at the bigger picture. It's like, okay, we're making little shifts here.
Yeah. And that's
Oh,
where like without community, it's extremely discouraging and you get in
yeah.
those mindset traps. You're like, oh my gosh, like am
Mhm.
I, you don't think you sometimes think you're weird. You're like, am I wrong? Am
Mhm.
I not supposed to be?
Mm.
Should I just teach them how to survive in this life rather than like shaking it up and making my life 10 times
Mhm.
more difficult? It would be way easier to just be
Mhm.
like,
Mm.
here's how you survive in this world. Like,
Yeah.
go survive. Good luck. We'll just do some days I'm throwing the towel in. We're just gonna survive. Like we're not, forget it. I don't have the I don't have the energy to be a wave maker today.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's been the biggest challenges. And I think even in schools, like as a parent, finding a community is like so difficult to talk to parents because you're like just it's like pump and go. Like you're in your car, everyone's
Yeah.
like driving, and you're like, when do you meet
Yeah.
parents? When do you connect with other people? And even trying to make play dates, it's like you have to depend
Yeah.
upon your child to be able to accurately write down someone's phone number and not lose the piece of paper. And then they're upset with you because you lost the paper. And it's like, okay,
That's
building a community for them and ourselves. And then it's a lot of work and it's not always the easiest thing
right.
for sure.
No, it's like it's like I feel like this is just it's like we punish ourselves for tend to punish ourselves just for being humans structured in a way that it doesn't work. And it's like we've
Mhm.
what I didn't realize because I've been doing my own reading, like learning about history, we learn it way too late. Like it's like it's like caveman times and then Jesus and then everything else. And everything else is basically colonial history. And you're like, hey,
Yeah.
you've left out a lot of shit. Like the ancient Greeks and the Minoans and which were like before the ancient Greeks, and they were all matriarchal societies and tribes. Even the way we were birthed was different. And it's like that, like in like caves that were in a specific location where the frequency was high and it was like a group thing. Everyone was synced to the moon. It's like, holy
Mhm.
shit, we've lost a lot. And
Yeah.
that's what we're feeling. And we think we're
Yeah.
failing. And it's like, no,
Mm.
no, no. That's why I feel like it's so important to not this whole time, like we've been talking about looking at ADHD, not as a neurological thing, but more of a spiritual thing. And I feel like that's important in every area of life because it's like, when you're struggling to parent or to be in a system or to da da da, it's because we've lost the tribe. Like you're not supposed to be the only one raising your kids. Like you're supposed to have like elders to teach them and people to come together and there's supposed to be community and you'd have that room to breathe.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, I guess the step I feel like we're at is like accepting that on a larger scale because when these it's not like there's a fix for that overnight, but just being aware and being like, okay, that's why it doesn't feel right, because we're
Yeah.
actually paddling upstream. So, okay, how can we kind of bring some of that back
Yeah.
and just kind of
Yeah.
rebuild it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100%. And that's like you said, we're learning history in a weird way. And it's like really funny to me because I always said we're doing things so backwards. We're just looking
Yeah.
back, but we're not looking forward.
Mhm.
We're not looking at like, okay, where are we in society right now? What do we need
Yeah.
to
Yes.
teach kids to survive now? Like I left high school thinking like, I don't even know how to manage a checkbook. I didn't learn any of these
Yeah.
things. I'm like, and now there's like, you don't do checkbooks, but you can still manage like your bills. But I'm just like, we're not learning what we need to survive and what we need to know. We're not learning to the extent that we need to be able to be independent thinkers and people in this society. And then we're spending so much time learning things that are not of any use to us, especially if we're
Yeah.
not passionate about it. So often, like you talk to kids, and the 9 out of 10 hate school. Why? Because they're
Yeah.
not learning what their soul
Hmm.
came here to learn. They're not learning what
Yeah.
their purpose is. They're learning how to obey and how to just do, just
Yeah.
like to tune out and to function based
Yeah.
on what others are telling you to believe and do. And yeah.
Yeah. What I'm hearing too is like from what you guys were both just saying is they're training children, everybody to learn to survive because they're creating survival mode, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mhm.
And like what you were
Mhm.
saying, Sam, about when we're like deprived of tribe, like our society has so become increasingly independent and like autonomous, and it's like you move away from your parents and
Yeah,
you
that's
start a
hyper
family.
individualism.
Yes,
Yeah.
and because of that, it perpetuates this survival mode and thinking about
Mm-hmm.
vibration, right? Like when we're in survival, because of the way that everything has been set up, the way that we've been, you know, taught for our whole lives of how it's supposed to be, we're we're drowning and we're in
Mhm.
survival mode all the time, which is by design,
Yeah.
for a system that thrives on this pyramid hierarchical structure of like we create workers, the workers pay their taxes, we get money, and we have power. And
Mm-hmm.
so, like, when we're in that model, like, when we finally wake up to like, oh fuck, we're in this model, you know, what do we do now? How do we break out of it? How do we
Yeah.
create this tribe when like
Mhm.
our whole life has been set up this way
Yeah.
and we've been brainwashed and it's, you know, like what now?
And the
Yeah.
process of breaking free from that is sporadic because it's like you're just getting little bits. It's like
Mhm.
you have to fit in your learning as an adult now because you didn't learn
Right.
it. And you're like,
Yeah.
okay, I don't have time to sit down for a month or two and just learn everything and piece it all together. There's like
A
you're
month or two
constantly taking, right? It's
to
like you're
learn
constantly
everything.
taking things to learn everything I need to know.
Well, if you do,
With my ADHD, I totally could do it if I really wanted to. If I was uninterrupted day and night for 2 months, I could be certified in like 25 things. I could write probably 10 books. Oh my
yeah,
God, I could do so much.
yeah,
2 months, you don't even realize. I
true.
do so much. I
And you
would
might
not
want
leave
to
my
sleep
house.
for like the first week.
I don't even think I'd sleep. I don't think I'd eat either. Forget
It's
everything
like
and
an
just
elf.
learn.
I got a full 40 minutes.
45 minutes, 40
Oh
minutes,
Full
and
40
I made that
man.
rocking chair, rocking horse.
Oh my God.
Uh,
Like, it's like this whole we we what we learn, right, is that something else is always the center of our reality, and that something else is never what, like, okay, I feel like because of the hyper individualism in the culture, right? You kind of learn your parents as God. We don't talk about soul. We don't talk about teachers. We talk about,
yeah.
like, it's so ridiculous. It's like we have this Play-Doh concept of like two Play-Dohs and you put a Play-Dohs together and another Play-Doh. It's like we think we're created by our parents, not called in as fucking souls from source. Like, that's the
Mhm.
Mm.
problem. How do you fix that? I don't know, but I think we're doing it. Like, I think
Yeah.
it's
Give me
happening.
2 months, I'll figure it
It's
out.
just
Well, okay.
It's the
I want to
lead up,
stay
right?
here, and I feel yeah called to step forward and share this. Is I
Intervene.
no, well, yeah, it's been,
Go,
I don't
go.
know. I feel like this has been birthed through me and I want to share it. The Awakening Academy is like um partially inspired by this, but something that's been coming for a long time through me and I'm so honored to share it. And so if you have 6 months and 2 hours a week, I'm going to be taking people through this whole journey of learning and unlearning and healing and awakening to their authentic and highest selves so that we can heal ourselves and start healing the world too.
Beautiful.
I love that you just did a plug. Like I
I know.
genuinely love it. Like you deserve to. It's just funny.
Yeah, it's
We're
necessary.
talking about it, and I'm
There
like,
needs to
yeah,
be
if
space
anyone
for
here
it.
is needing, like, where the heck do I get support? Where do I find tribe?
Yeah.
How do I do this? Like, where do I
Yes.
go?
Yeah, if
Um,
this resonates and you're flailing, like, yeah, check him out if you haven't
thank
already.
you.
Oh my gosh. You're
Thank
so
you.
cute.
And I like that you said
No.
6 months and gave a specific time, not 6 months off the grid.
Yup.
So
Shake
funny.
shit up.
Uh, yeah. 'Cause, like this whole thing has been a wild journey. I feel like we started with like talking about basically our doing inner child work together. Like,
Hmm.
I feel like that's what we were doing. Like, we were the three of us were doing inner child healing because we were sharing our stories about what school was like, and I feel like at that point, we weren't aware then that what institution meant. Do you know what I mean? Like, we weren't aware we had been institutionalized. We
Mhm.
thought, oh, we all grew up with ADHD. School was hard as a consequence. And now we're like, oh, oh no, that was backwards. It was like we were
Yeah.
always connected to our souls, and the institution is the one that I feel like it sent us in different directions of journey. But
Yeah.
like, I feel like that was a big,
Hmm.
I don't know how you guys feel, but that really changed my self-perception. Just talking about our stories and finding out that we had so many things in common. It was like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't feel like I can't finish stuff because I can't finish stuff. It's because like when you're told what to finish, or when your filter's very open, so you're taking in a lot, like it can be difficult when you don't have grounded energy. It's like, what do you do? It's all kind of, I don't know,
Yeah.
Yeah,
a lot of different things at once.
100%.
Hmm.
Yeah.
When you were talking about seeing parents as God, I was thinking of like the first 9 years of our life. Like our brains are sponges, and the book, The Four Agreements, really does a good job of like explaining this. But in these first 9 years, our brains are literally like, because we view our parents as God through like evolution and survival.
Survival,
Um,
we've been forced to. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. We just like sponge take what they tell us. Like I just got a text from my mom this morning. She's like, "Were you at the laundromat last night?" She's like, "Don't go to the laundromat at night. You can't do that. Like that's too dangerous."
Oh,
And
Kim, were
God bless
you?
my
I'm just
mother.
joking. Don't do that.
I, I
Oh my
know. But it's like
gosh.
when you have all this, programming, like, or a
Hmm.
parent that has fear, it's like you take that in, you take that on, it
Hmm.
programs your nervous system and your beliefs about yourself and the world and
Yeah.
like what is safe, what's going to kill you. And
Yeah.
it's theirs. And then we take it in and digest it, create a sense of self through all these beliefs. And then it's
Yeah.
up to us to see, was this really mine? Where did it come from? Is this still serving me? Am I truly not enough for failing at all of these, you know, not fitting into society things, not being able to, you know, meet deadlines or manage finances or grocery shop without freaking out? Like,
Yeah.
am I broken? And it's like, no, again, being able to dive in and look at those things for ourselves. And
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah, I think a lot of the times I mean, from my perspective of how I viewed my parents compared to how I'm like, oh my God, my kids are viewing me like this now.
Mm.
you realize like that is happening. And even if you don't want it to be happening, I'm still like in that moment, I'm still reflecting the fears that my parents had that I
Mhm.
don't necessarily believe in, but that are subconsciously just constantly running. And
Mhm.
I'm seeing it unfold. I'm like, how do I stop it? Like, you're
Mhm.
not able to stop it all the time. And that's why like I was talking to my mother-in-law and I was like, we each generation is supposed to do better than the next. So we are in that every generation is breaking some pattern. You can't break them all. You can't get rid of all of them in one swoop. Um, Maybe people have, I don't know, but I have not been able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But there have been huge things that I've changed and that I know my parents didn't do that their parents did. And so each generation gets better and better. And I think that when we have that in our mind, rather than constantly always looking at all the flaws, which I have done and I still do sometimes, like, oh my God, look at everything that's not working. And we're constantly just seeing that and being told that over and over again by therapists or doctors or educators. You're always being told what your kid can't do yet rather than what they are doing well. And even in like the 504 and IEP meetings, like there's like maybe 2 minutes of it of like, what does your kid do well? Here's what we think your kid does well.
Mm-hmm.
And then now let's look at everything they don't do well. And it's like, it's painful to hear and to listen to, but it's like if we change the way we function and the way we think and we view things, like you said in the beginning, Sam, it's like those things will fall more into line and people will be less resistant to change and more open and excited about these things rather than I don't want to go to school because I just don't fit in or I don't do well and I'm always failing and I'm not like the other kids. And it's like that's where their mind goes.
Mm-hmm.
And I have the privilege of having kids who are older and kids who are younger, and the younger kids love school. They're always doing well because they're learning something new and they're growing at a rapid rate rather than my older kids who have slowed down quite a bit and they're like, I don't want to do math. I don't want to do this. I don't, like, and they're starting to now have the resistance because their core beliefs have been, I'm struggling.
Mm.
And it's really
Mm-hmm.
sad to see. So I think it's really interesting
Yeah.
that you had said, like, we're just absorbing all the time,
Yeah.
everything around us.
But I want to affirm though, Paige, that you are doing an
Yes.
incredible job. You are
Thank you.
doing better than your parents. You are breaking generational cycles. You are creating little amazing conscious humans, even that they have big feelings and are
Yeah.
safe to express them. Think about how many
Mhm.
times we
Oh
felt
my God,
unsafe
yeah.
to express our
Yeah.
emotions and what was truly going on inside. The fact that they are able to do that, even if it's a tornado sometimes,
Yeah.
Mm.
you know, is a
It
testament
is.
to you giving them the freedom to be themselves.
Yeah, and I think that's like my biggest goal is just to help create schools that are like that as well because these kids have these big feelings.
Yeah.
And those were always my favorite kids because I was like, I get you.
Yeah.
I see you. I see you. You're not
Yeah.
bad. You're
Yeah.
just sensitive and you're misunderstood.
Mm.
And that's what school should be. And there should not be a difference between home and education. There
Mhm.
should be this bridge that's always intertwined
Oh, that's a
because
really good point.
if
Oh
you
my
can't
God.
feel safe, if you're not safe at home, how are you going to feel safe at school?
Mhm.
And school should be, in my view, a lot of people will disagree with me, but in my view, school should even be more safe than home because you have these not detached, but they're not emotionally
Yeah.
attached to these students as a parent is. And if you
Yeah.
ever listen to a kid come home from school, they're listening to these teachers more than they're listening to their parents. And again, that goes back to the tribe. And it's not a separate entity than school. We are together shaping these humans, and every year they're constantly changing a teacher. And by the time they get comfortable with that teacher, the teacher changes. And it's like,
Oh
okay,
my
we are
God.
constantly
Yeah.
detaching that we're cutting the learning, these like
Mhm.
energetic flows of knowledge and growth.
Yeah.
And once they start to feel safe in their growth, we sever that tie and we shove them with someone new and says, now you're starting from scratch
Oh
again.
my God, you
And
know what? Like,
Dang.
okay,
yeah,
this isn't my calling, but my God, if it's someone's, hopefully this is like you can pick up on
right.
this. I like a school that's collaborative, that is the tribe
Mhm.
among teachers. So teacher,
Yeah,
because if you think about it, like, right, like one like 25-year-old to like 40 kid, are you kidding? Like, it doesn't even matter how old. It's staggering that new
yeah,
teachers are like, they're like 20. And you're like, what do you know? Like
Yeah.
right.
you're a
Yeah.
baby. And you have all the, it's like if that could be a community, because I remember I was really lucky
Mhm.
to have like a bunch of my teachers were friends. So they had the same philosophy, they had the same, like I kind of already knew them because they'd
Yeah,
like come into the classroom. And so it felt
Mm.
safe going from grade to grade. And like
Yeah.
if that were an intentional thing, because that just happened. But if we designed it that way, oh my God, like if school were
right.
designed so that it's not like, you know how sometimes there'll be like segregated like learning environments for kids who are sensitive, and they'll have sensory friendly things. And
Yeah,
Mhm.
if we design, why don't we design everything that way? It's kind of like,
right.
and
And
I
that's
always
why
think,
there's so much like I don't even know the word to use right now. My
I
brain
feel
is
like it's
going silent,
coming.
but like,
I feel like this is
yeah, it's
coming.
here. It's like
Yeah.
we have these separate classrooms and we're wanting kids to
Yeah.
be inclusive, yet we're not having them learn how to live in the world together. And then when they
Hmm.
come in contact with each other, everyone's like freaked out, like, oh my God, this
Yeah.
kid's screaming. Like, okay, but
Yeah.
that's how that kid's body works. Like
Yeah.
it's loud noises. So you learn to adapt and work together and building that tribe and that community of school is designed for everyone, not
Hmm.
designed to make everyone one. Like,
Yeah.
like we're not going to
Oh,
all
that's
be the
good.
same.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
good.
Good bridge.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
want everyone to be the same. And that's not, no one is the same. So you
Mhm.
can't teach them all the same and
That's so
you
good.
can't,
Like,
yeah,
man.
it's a weird environment. I
Yeah.
never, I never liked school because I never understood it. It made no
Yeah.
sense to me.
I
It
totally
was
agree.
so stupid. And
So stupid.
it felt
No,
like prison.
Uh,
I would go
yes,
in
100%.
and I would go to high school and I would be like, this person clearly has an opinion about me. And there, the best example would be in high school. We went to a Catholic school. So like you had to have like your shirt tucked in and whether wear pants or skirt or whatever. And there'd be people with like pants lower than their waist and their shirts untucked. And I have the back of my shirt untucked and I'm getting detention, but the kid who has I can see their underpants gets nothing. And I would
That's so
speak up. I'd be
stupid.
like, this makes
Right?
no
Because they'd be
sense.
afraid of that
Can
kid.
you see your
Because the
ass? I
faculty would be
can't see my
afraid
own
of
ass.
that kid. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I was calling the dean out and he hated me. And if you ever watch this, I know you hated me. So you didn't do your job well.
You know
And
what? Screw you, sir.
like, yeah, 100%. And he's even admitted it to other people that I knew. And it was like really funny because I was like, I knew it. I knew it as a teenager. I knew it. And I didn't stay silent. And I think that's where we
Right.
have these emotional people trying to control and shape people into one type of thing rather than seeing each kid as an individual and saying like, okay, this kid
Hmm.
needs a little
Yeah.
bit more push and this kid needs this. And it's like working with the kids. You're not working with them. You're trying to control them. And
And
when
then
they
the ones
don't,
that
you
want
fail.
to literally can't because the numbers are crazy. But
Yeah,
it's
the
like,
numbers are
it's
insane.
a whole it's a whole thing. But I feel like as we move into the age of Aquarius, and
Yeah.
I don't know why maybe I'm so crazy like that. Like it's real, but I think it just sounds so new agey. But we are moving into it. So it's like I
Yeah.
feel like with that will come like there are
Isn't that
going to
tomorrow
be,
or today?
oh, I think it's today.
Perfect.
The
I like that
19th.
we just
Yeah, I'm
talked
pretty
about
sure
this.
it's like right now. It's
Well, that's why
happening.
we were called, see,
Yeah.
spiritually called to speak on these things.
But I feel like it is changing. Like the degree,
Yeah.
because it starts personally, right? Like as we wake up personally, that's what creates friction within these systems, like in a healthy way, where it's
Yeah.
like without resistance, there's no change. And we look at,
Mhm.
all of human history. I think we get kind of caught up sometimes in our own time. But then when we look at the scope of it, it's like, oh wow, okay, this group of people had no rights before. This group of people had no rights before. It's like we're waking up
Mhm.
into to the fact that like, oh, okay, it's not cool to own a human. Oh, it's not cool to own a whole time. Like what the fuck have we been doing?
Yeah.
And it's like this collective like coming to consciousness of that. And then now I feel like it's the same thing happening over and over, but more sophisticated now. So the cycle's
Yeah.
coming back where it's like, oh, okay, so now is institutions and it's like
Mhm.
it's schools and it's the way we structure things isn't working, but that's naturally shifting, like as more people become conscious and as the older ones who want to hang on to it age out of those systems. It's
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
it's like, okay, we're getting there, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a long time where I was like, I would say last year, not this past year, but the year before, it was like a lot of people in my world and tribe were just like, what the fuck is going to happen? Like, really concerned about
Yeah.
the future. And I'm like, well, we need to still hang on to hope that like it's going to get lighter and that this world, like is not going to completely go to shit
Mhm.
and that, it's not the apocalypse that like we can shift these systems and we can, the planet can wake up and there can be a positive collective future. And
Yeah.
I went to this, what's the word? I don't know, workshop convention weekend thing, and she was channeling like some high vibrations, and she was like, okay, a lot of you want to plan your like escape, kind of like we talked about earlier. You're like,
Yeah.
you're gonna go live off the grid and you're just gonna wait it out and come back when everything is like gone to shit. And it's like, she's like, no, you have to stay where you're planted. You have to,
Yeah.
heal, you continue healing yourself, find your
Water
purpose and
your
your calling and
garden.
your passion, and yeah, exactly, and shake shit up where
I
you're
love that.
planted. You're gonna like hoard all of
Yeah.
your knowledge to yourself. Like, no, you're the teachers, you're the healers, you're the boots on the ground. That's what you're here for. And I was
Hmm.
Yeah.
like, shit, she caught me.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. And that's how I felt over this past year has been. I mean, when I took the kids out of school, I was like, it's easier just to leave and do it
Mhm,
myself. But
mhm,
then I was like very challenged with that because I was also like, yes, but then all the other people who don't have the means to do this are stuck in the system that's not changing.
mhm,
And I just kept being called back to like the school system. And I'm like, my kids are very aware of the system and they talk a lot about it and they don't like it, and they're like, this is stupid. Why are they teaching me these things? I'm never going to use this. I'm not going to, like, this is not doing anything for my life. um and it's just like, okay, they get it and they're going they're going to be challenging me. But I think it's a good thing that they're aware of it, because I think if we're not, if we run away from it, nothing will change. And we're just hoping that someone
Mhm.
else will do the job that we're meant to be doing.
mhm.
And it's
Yeah.
way easier to just be like, oh, I'm sending hope. I'm just going to stay out of it. And you're just like,
Yeah.
no, because that's why it's going to keep perpetuating. And that's why it
Yeah.
has perpetuated, because it's easier to stay silent. It's
Mhm.
easier to walk
Right.
away. It's
It's
easier to hide.
inspired
Yeah.
action
And
with
stay in
action
your
being.
ignorant bubble and be like, I am by myself. Everything's great. This doesn't happen in my world, but you're like, you're in this world, whether you're in your bubble or not.
Mhm.
And it's happening. And kids are struggling and people are struggling, and you're here for a reason. And it doesn't mean you have to go and like jump and fight everybody. It's like you are meant to join the community and
Mhm.
build
In
the
some way.
tribes. And
Yeah.
yeah, and whatever way feels called, even
Yeah.
if it feels scary, you know?
Yeah, beautiful page.
Yeah.
Sam, can you tell us a teeny bit more about the age of Aquarius before we wrap this in a bow?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, yeah, like basically an era is okay, so you know how like the sun moves through the 12 signs through the
Yes.
year and
Yeah.
there's 12. So which funny enough, the original calendar was 13 months because there's 13 moon cycles per year. That's why the moon cycles don't line up with the months which they are supposed to.
Mm,
Months. So anyways,
Whoop.
there's yeah, the
That's so
the
wild.
the 12 signs that the earth cycles through, or the sun cycles through rather, sorry, during the year. We are moving like as a collective in eras through that whole astrological cycle as well. I'm kind of fuzzy on the details of that, but basically like it's like you can think of it as like we stay in a particular sign for an era, so 2000 years until we make the
Oh,
whole circuit.
Mm.
oh
So
wow.
we're moving into Aquarius for the next 2000. So like this past era started like with Jesus. We've been in the age of Pisces and now we're moving. So there's not I've heard the 19th, November 19th. A lot of it's like theoretical because it's not a very specific date, but the way that intuitive and spiritual people have been feeling is consistent with the shift into the sign of Aquarius, which is about like innovation and a lot of technological advancements. So people are going to be having like downloads about AI and it tech that can advance our society basically. And there's going to be a lot of people waking up to the crumbling of these old systems that aren't serving us. And you can see this, right? Like there's a
Yeah.
lot of like individual shakeups happening, a lot of collective shakeups happening, and it's like
Yeah.
that is symptomatic of the age of Aquarius. It's really cool because it's like, oh, that's literally the frequencies changing
Yeah.
because of this.
Perfect. That was so helpful. Thank you, Sam.
No
Yeah.
And
problem.
what I've heard about it too in the spiritual circles is like it's the great awakening. It's the time,
Yeah.
that these like souls, including us, have come here for. And especially if you identify, again, going back to the very beginning of this podcast, like whatever whether you identify with a label of highly sensitive or ADHD or autism or anything, if whether you reject the labels, you probably are, a light worker of some sort and a highly sensitive person and here for a reason. I can guarantee you that if you've listened to us,
Yeah.
if you found us, and that part of that purpose is to not only be witness to this great awakening, like we've, in the spiritual circles, they say it's like one of the coolest times ever in history and very pivotal for Earth and very important for the timeline. And talking about these higher frequency, highly sensitive people coming in, especially they say in the last 30 years as children, like we've had, a lot of like mini revolutions in terms of human rights and all of
Mhm.
those things. And
Yeah.
the people here to shake shit up and be loud and break the systems and everything, or be quiet and just raise the frequency of the planet
Yeah.
quietly. That's all important too, but it's like this tipping of the scales for our future
Mm.
that, can shift us into a whole new future. And I just want everyone to remember your power in your divinity as a magical creator. Like you're way, way, way more powerful than you realize. What you visualize, what you ask for, what you intend to create in your own life is also creating for the collective. And so like as much as you can, please imagine a future that you want to create.
Yeah.
I love it.
I love that.
Ah, well, thank you so much. Thanks, guys, and thanks everybody. Like anyone who's listening, like wait, you'll find us, you'll see us. We've gone in different directions and it's like surprising to us
Yeah.
what's happening, speaking for myself at least, but I feel like you guys resonate too, for sure. And so who knows what's gonna happen, but we just know that, this has all been the exploration of something really beautiful, and this has been part of that frequency shift we're talking about. So thank you for joining us and thanks to you too, because this has been, I mean, it's been so much fun.
Thanks to
Yes.
you.
Thank you.
It's been a blast.
I
Absolutely.
love you
Love you
guys.
guys.
Love you guys too.